So welcome to this week's Optimal Health Clinic Facebook Live. And this week, I wanted to speak to something that's come up a few times recently working with patients around knowing when to start increasing activity. And the specific question is, do I need to be symptom-free at rest to start increasing activity? Because one way to think about it is someone that doesn't have ME/CFS, if they were resting and they were, feeling kind of good and well, they wouldn't have ME/CFS symptoms. And so it makes sense that you think, well, surely you should wait until you feel that way before you start kind of bouncing the boundaries and start increasing your activity. Now, for some people on the recovery path, that is the case, that they will find through rest and through doing the various interventions they might be doing, they find they get to the point where as long as they stay within a certain level of activity, they don't really have symptoms. And actually, those symptoms are a helpful barometer that if they start to increase activity too quickly or they bounce the boundaries too much, they get a bit of a flare of those symptoms, they reduce, those symptoms settle again, and they find that over time their capacity increases, they can do more, let's say, before those symptoms flare, and then that gradually increases and increases up to the point of recovery. And in that instance, really symptoms are a really helpful way of knowing how much you should or shouldn't be doing. For other people, it's not quite so clear-cut or so simple. That actually what they find is the sign of progress is not necessarily feeling significantly better. The earlier signs of progress are that they can do more than they were doing before without symptoms getting worse, or without having what they might call crash symptoms. Like there are probably certain symptoms that flare when you're kind of in a crash or you've done too much. And so if in that instance, if we're waiting to have no symptoms before increasing activity, then we're basically waiting forever because that isn't the path forwards. One of the things that's interesting, and it's something that I've spoken to in various other places in these videos and also on Secrets to Recovery and such places, is that what can happen is when energy comes back, energy actually starts to go to the nervous system. So rather than energy coming back and just like starting to genuinely feel better, like there's like more energy in your body and you feel like you can do more things, oddly, and this is a classic stage 1 to stage 2 transition in the recovery path, that what starts to happen is actually in some ways it feels like symptoms get worse. Like you have more anxiety. For some people, you actually find you sleep less and you sleep worse. You feel more irritable. You have more muscle pains, and you just generally don't feel good. The odd thing is, the driver of that is actually that you've got more energy, but that energy allows you to have more anxiety or more overstimulation in your nervous system. And that more overstimulation in your nervous system allows you to create more symptoms. So in a situation like that, if you're basically waiting for the symptoms to go, actually you can end up getting more symptoms rather than less symptoms. And so in that instance, the way to handle it is, yes, using tools like things that you would use to calm down maladaptive stress response, but actually starting to bounce the boundaries and increase your activity levels in an odd way will bring that, especially if you do it in a kind of calm and gentle way, that will bring the energy from your head, energy from kind of buzzing in your nervous system, and it'll help ground it more into your body. It's a little bit like when energy starts to come back, it will flood the paths which are most well-trodden. And if the most well-trodden path in your system is that energy is being used to fuel anxiety, as you get more energy, you will get more anxiety. Now, that's a step, not a destination. The step, and then the way to handle that step is, as I say, to bring the energy more down into the body by increasing activity. Now, what makes this so tricky is the difference between what I just described here and the opposite, i.e. going into a sorry, someone was trying to dial me. Going into a crash and feeling worse is that you may also get a flare of anxiety and a flare of symptoms, and you're genuinely actually feeling worse, not feeling better. And that is obviously a puzzle. And this is where learning to listen to your body, deciphering your body's communications, understanding the difference between different messages from your body becomes absolutely crucial. And I think I've talked about this in a previous Facebook Live, but one of the helpful ways to discern this is that if it is that you're going into a crash, generally you will feel a sense of anxiety, but you will feel there's nothing real underneath it, that it's like your body's like pumping kind of energy, trying to create energy when it's not really there. If it's what I described previously, there's a kind of more of a sense of like urgency and energy underneath it, and there is some real energy there, but it's coming out in the nervous system and coming out through anxiety. So there's not, at least not this in my mind at the moment, there's not an easy kind of 5-point checklist that I can give you to help you identify it, because it is subtle and it is nuanced by the person, and this is where working with an experienced practitioner is incredibly helpful to start to get their perspective and their experience working with lots of people to kind of decipher the messages. So my point here is absolutely not, it's definitively not, if you have an increase in anxiety, it means you need to do more activity. And often it's the opposite. And as part of the kind of the fun and the complexity of this process, in some cases, an increase in anxiety or a flare of symptoms is a sign of progress. You need to learn to decipher. Sometimes you have to deconstruct, and you have to be careful to not be kind of obsessing about this, and be careful for this not to be something where you're just endlessly going around in your minds, and that just causes a whole new set of challenges. But learning your body, learning to listen, recognizing you don't have to be symptom-free before you start increasing activity if you're one of the people that's not the case for. And this is absolutely not me condoning going, well, Alex said, if I've got symptoms, I can still do things and ignore them. That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that for some people, at a specific step, a specific transition of the recovery path, specifically the transition from stage 1 to stage 2, one of the things that we notice is as energy comes back, that energy goes to the nervous system, we get more anxiety, sometimes we get a worsening of symptoms, and we improve that by sensibly, carefully, in a very paced and bouncing the boundaries kind of way, increasing slowly what we're doing, and that will allow our energy to come back down more deeply into our body. And then it will become more real energy. And also initially, what's happening there is there isn't really any energy, and there isn't a store of energy, so it's all kind of just kind of going into the kind of buzziness of the nervous system. But actually then what starts to happen is you start to build some basic energy and some basic reserves. So you don't need the buzzy, anxious energy at that point, because it's actually real energy for your body to be able to use and to fuel what you are doing. You know, this is one of those videos where, you know, I'm kind of reflecting as I'm talking, and this is really complex. This is really nuanced. It's subtle. Maybe not complex isn't the right word. It's subtle and it's nuanced, and it's different for different people. It's different at different points. There's easy traps for achiever patterns to come in, pushing to come in, taking what I'm saying and spinning it and using it to justify not listening to your body. In a sense, what I'm saying is listen to your body, but recognize that what you think your body's saying and what your body is actually saying is not always as simple as it might at first appear. So I hope that's been useful. And yeah, I'm mindful this one could be very easily misused. That is not not what I'm giving permission for. But I do think it's an important piece. And it might be, if you're watching this now, this isn't where you are right now, and it's not relevant right now, and it's something that you kind of bank in your kind of background, in your memory, and it's something that is useful in a month's time or 6 months' time or a year's time or whatever that may be. Or it's something that you might be able to look back and identify, oh, well, that's a stage that I can remember that I went through previously on the recovery path. So like with all things, everything is about what's right for you. At any one point, listen to your body, listen to your own wisdom, and listen to any experts you're working with who are making sense. Don't listen to experts that don't make sense, but listen to experts that are making sense. Hope that's been useful, and I look forward to talking with you next week. 2 weeks' time, I'm abroad, so I may or may not be able to get the window to do the session. I will try to, but I hope that's been useful, and bye-bye for now.